I've never really wondered what my life would be like if I was born with mushrooms sprouting from my head or foliage forming around my eyes. I'm sure it would have been a difficult childhood at the very least. Thankfully, Avowed lets you skip over all of that and thrust you into world of Aora, the very same that we visited in Pillars of Eternity, as a being blessed by an unknown god sent to uncover why a soul plague has infected the lands. It's Obsidian's first-party AAA game since they were acquired by Microsoft, so, needless to say, the expectations are high. Avowed centers on a strange island called the Living Lands. Known for its harsh environment, chaotic inhabitants, and aversion to order, the Living Lands is a test for all those seeking a new way of life. It also seems to be entangled in a problem called the Dream Scourge. Our main character, known as the Envoy, has been sent to the Living Lands by the Emperor of a neighbouring imperial realm of Adir to determine what's causing this Dream Scourge. The game opens with a shipwreck. The Imperial Envoy is washed up on the shore of a small island off the coast of Paradise, a port city in the Living Lands. Nearly all of the accompanying crew is killed in a wreck, except for a small fuzzy blue guy. This is Garrick.
You're alive! Thank the gods I pulled you out the wreck when I did.
He informs the Envoy that the island is home to an Imperial outpost, but it seems they've turned on their own countrymen almost as if they were rabid. We learn pretty quickly that the Dream Scourge has infected the outpost, causing those plagued by it to experience bizarre dreams, hallucinations, and eventually lose their minds. Strange fungal growths appear on their faces, not too unlike the one our Envoy has on their own face, being a godlike and all. Yes, our hero of the hour has a unique condition. In the world of Avowed and Pillars of Eternity exist godlikes, those blessed by one of 11 gods before their birth. This blessing grants strange physical features that relate to the deity in question. However, in Avowed, our main character has no idea which god their features come from. What we do know comes from the game's character creator, which imposes colourful mushroom or fungal-like growths on your character's face and hair. These range from small facial markings to a full tree-like covering. Whether you like it or not, you're going to look a bit freaky. After navigating through the outpost, learning the basic mechanics, our protagonist eventually makes it to Paradise, as originally intended. We soon learn that the Adirian Empire isn't liked very much, and those with mushrooms coming out of their faces are liked even less.
They told me you were a godlike, but I didn't know what to expect.
We also meet the first of 4 companions, Kai, another blue guy, only this time he's less furry and more scaly. With a companion in tow, it's time to see what the Living Lands has to offer, and the newly formed alliance sets out to uncover exactly what the Dream Scourge is and how to stop it. From the outset, it's clear Avowed isn't supposed to be an epic-scale RPG like your Skyrims or your Baldur's Gates. It's much more in line with what we saw in the Outer Worlds, which is no bad thing. For one, the game has defined zones instead of a sprawling open world. These zones are still pretty large with plenty to explore, like caves and ancient structures, and help establish a good pace. You can work through one zone, completing side quests or bounties before continuing on with the story and moving on to the next. Even though you encounter some enemies that are above your current capabilities, you'll know that the zone contains all the tools you need to improve your abilities and gear to reach their level. The environments are vibrant and initially intriguing, but cracks start to form when you look a little closer. One of my main gripes is its limited immersion. When I first stepped foot in Paradise, I stopped for a minute to wonder what sort of things I would discover, what surprises were awaiting me. What I very quickly found was that surprises and chance didn't really come into it. Everything that you can interact with is highlighted in the world, be it items to pick up or text to read. There's plenty of strange plants and foliage in the Living Lands, but only a small number of them can actually be used. Same goes for doors, chests, NPCs, anything you can use is highlighted, so I just ignored anything that wasn't. Outside of quests, the world doesn't really react to your presence at all. There's non-hostile wildlife throughout the Living Lands that's little more than set dressing. I tried to hit a boar-like creature thinking it might drop some upgrade materials or cooking ingredients that I'd previously only found in chests or enemy drops, but the swing didn't even connect. My weapon just phased through and the creature just carried on grazing as if I wasn't there. Somewhere called the Living Lands, it felt a bit lifeless. Something similar happened when I came across this crime scene. I noticed a dagger on the floor, highlighted so I knew I could pick it up, wondering if the NPCs would turn on me for meddling in something I obviously had no right to meddle in. Essentially, I'd stolen evidence, and the NPCs remained where they were, simply saying something to the effect of, "That's the Imperial Envoy, stay out of her way." No repercussions, no scolding or affinity changes, nothing. I felt like a Mary Sue who could do no wrong. Not even my companions cared. Actions having little to no weight was, unfortunately, a common theme during my time with Avowed. Even in quests, my choices had very little impact on the overall outcome. An expedition party had gone missing in a cave. In one playthrough, I found them. In another, I didn't. It actually didn't matter, they were dead regardless. I spared an assassin instead of fighting them. Again, it didn't matter, they died regardless. Even dialogue options are mostly just different ways of phrasing the same thing. Using your attributes or background to influence a dialogue option doesn't actually give you any advantages or disadvantages, it's just another way to get through the conversation. In the Outer Worlds, you had reputations to explore with certain factions, opening up quests or turning certain NPCs hostile based on your actions. Here, there's none of that. Without any consequences, suddenly the narrative and world building loses intrigue. I found myself completing quests just for the XP or to tick it off the list, rather than any investment in characters or outcomes. Speaking of XP, Avowed features an interesting combat and progression system that lends itself to fairly dynamic encounters. Rather than commit to any set classes, you can mix and match your abilities to create your own playstyle. For example, you can improve your magical abilities while also exploring upgrades to your melee combat. This is largely down to having 2 weapon loadouts you can swap to on the go. You might opt for a sword and shield in one loadout, then, with a push of a button, swap to wand and grimoire for magical attacks, or a 2-handed axe for that extra damage. Swapping between weapons is a little slow and clunky at first, but can be improved through special equipment or passives. Abilities come under 4 different skill trees: Fighter, Ranger, Wizard, and Godlike. Players can pick and choose various abilities in the first 3 skill trees as they become available to really build out their combat style. The Godlike skill tree includes abilities that are unlocked over time, either through progression or by uncovering memories of past Godlikes across the world. Improve your bow and sneaking abilities with Ranger, and then mix it with some fighter abilities to bolster your health and resistance. You can also respec pretty much any time at the cost of a few coins. It's a nice way to work out what's working for you and what you should be boosting without committing too heavily to any set path. Combat does come with a few pain points, however. The strength and level of your enemies you face across the Living Lands are represented by tiers. These are the same tiers that your armor and weapons use. The tiers range from 1 to 5, with 3 upgrade levels within each tier. Perhaps you're using common or fine tier weapons and armor at upgrade level 1, but the enemy you're facing is fine tier level 3. As far as the game is concerned, you're outmatched. Your companions will begin yelling things at you like,
Your armor could use some work. Let's check the watermill for supplies.
Finding decent weapons and armor out in the wild that match your playstyle isn't too common. You can buy some, or upgrade them with some limited resources, but a lot of the time you're going to be facing enemies that are a level or a tier above you. Which is great, we like a challenge, and we want our combat encounters to feel significant. What we don't want is every companion quipping about how terrible your equipment is every time you land a hit on something. I'm just going to keep hitting this walking mushroom thing with my gets the job done sword, and we're all just going to have to deal with that. You can upgrade your equipment at camp, providing you have the right amount of upgrade plants, hides, metals, etc., but it's rarely enough to level up your gear to that of a zone's enemies, or at least not until you've seen all there is to see in that particular zone. You'll find some unique gear on your travels, which are more powerful items that often have an enchantment tied to them. You can level up these unique weapons like normal, and you can adjust and improve their enchantments at camp to make them more effective. What you can't do is enchant normal weapons, only upgrade them. Consequence of that is once you find a unique item that fits your playstyle, you don't really have any use for normal items anymore. All you can do is scrap them for parts, store them, or sell them. Oh, except for gloves and boots. You can only sell or store them for some reason. You can't upgrade or enchant them either, even if they're unique. There's also no helms. We wouldn't want to hide those lovely fungal growths now, would we? I had high expectations for Avowed. I've enjoyed a lot of Obsidian's other ventures, from The Outer Worlds and Grounded to Fallout New Vegas. When I heard that the studio had another RPG in the works, I was more or less on board from the get-go. But ultimately, Avowed has left me feeling a bit dissatisfied. It is a perfectly serviceable game, and a good portion of it certainly grew on me. It's just missing too many elements that would have helped me immerse myself completely. Combat is enjoyable and dynamic, making it one of Avowed's clear strengths, but it's the RPG elements that fall short. There's a lack of customization in gear, not just for our main character but also our companions. You also only get a choice of 2 races in character customization, human or elf, despite the Living Lands being inhabited by all sorts of races. Dialogue and quest choices carry little weight to them, making it hard to engage with the story as a whole. The Living Lands also feel, ironically, lifeless. If these are elements that aren't sticking points for you, then you'll have a decently enjoyable time. For me, all the above was coupled with a few bugs and some noticeable jank. While companion character models look pretty decent, the world's NPCs don't fare too well. Facial animations are a bit plasticky, and hair textures leave a lot to be desired, though I will admit this might be a symptom of me playing on PC. As for bugs, there were times I was left unable to complete quests, owing to necessary items not being dropped when they were supposed to. Bugs aren't a deal breaker for me. We all remember Skyrim when it launched on PS3, but it's important to mention that this wasn't all smooth sailing. Avowed clocks in at a solid but disappointing 7 out of 10. It excels in its good pacing, vibrant zones, and dynamic combat, but is ultimately let down by a weak, immersive world and the illusion of choice.